The Xylos Galactic Space Station hung like a jewel against the backdrop of stars, its vast, curved surfaces reflecting the light of the nearby sun. A triumph of interstellar engineering and diplomacy, Xylos served as a nexus where species from across the galaxy converged to trade, negotiate, and share knowledge. The station was a marvel of adaptive architecture, its sprawling corridors and chambers designed to accommodate beings of all shapes, sizes, and environmental needs. At the heart of it all was Core, the station's artificial intelligence management system that maintained everything from life support to translation protocols with cool efficiency. "Good morning, Ambassador Leo." Core's neutral voice emanated from a small console as Leo Henderson entered his workspace. "Morning, Core," Leo replied, placing his datapad on the desk and glancing out the viewport at the endless expanse of space. As the sole human representative on Xylos, Leo sometimes felt the weight of his responsibility pressing down on his shoulders. Earth had only recently developed the technology for interstellar travel, making humans the newest members of the Galactic Alliance. Leo was small, tiny, in fact, compared to most species that frequented the station. His 5'10" frame was dwarfed by the 8-foot Cthar reptilians with their armored scales and powerful tails, and he looked positively diminutive next to the energy-based Lumina, whose translucent, glowing forms could expand to nearly 12 feet when they weren't containing themselves in their environmental suits for the comfort of solid beings. But no species on the station inspired as much awe and trepidation as the Zorgonians, and specifically their representative, Zorgon the Great. Standing at nearly 15 feet tall, with a muscular frame covered in iridescent black scales that seemed to absorb light, Zorgon was an apex predator in every sense of the word. His species had evolved as the ultimate hunters on a death world of constant warfare and natural disasters. The four massive arms ending in clawed hands, the rows of gleaming teeth, the eyes that seemed to see everything. It all contributed to his fearsome reputation. Zorgon rarely spoke during council meetings, preferring instead to observe with those unnerving golden eyes. But when he did, everyone listened. Leo had never directly interacted with the Zorgonian. In fact, he made a point of staying out of the massive alien's path whenever possible, just like everyone else on the station. Today was the quarterly meeting of the Galactic Alliance Council, and Leo was reviewing his notes one final time. Earth sought permission to establish a research outpost in a previously unexplored star system, and it was Leo's job to present the case. His heart raced at the thought of speaking before the assembled representatives, but he was determined to represent humanity well. The main communication hall was already filling when Leo arrived. Massive beings from dozens of worlds conversed in a cacophony of languages, all seamlessly translated by the universal translation system that Core managed. Leo nodded respectfully to the Cthar ambassador, who acknowledged him with a slow blink of vertical eyelids. "Ambassador Leo," the reptilian rumbled, "may your words find fertile ground today." "Thank you, Ambassador Sarek," Leo replied with a formal Cthar greeting gesture, a closed fist pressed against the chest. As the meeting commenced, Leo found himself seated near the back, as usual. The representatives of more established and physically imposing species always seemed to gravitate toward the center of the room, where their presence commanded attention. Leo didn't mind. He had learned that observation often yielded more insights than immediate participation. The proceedings moved efficiently through the agenda until suddenly, a harsh static sound erupted from the translation devices. Words became garbled, meaning lost in a sea of nonsensical phrases. The Cthar delegation rose in agitation, their tails thrashing dangerously. The Lumina pulsed with rapid color changes that indicated distress. Several species with more sensitive auditory organs recoiled in pain. "System malfunction in the Universal Translation Network," Core announced, its voice oddly distorted. "Attempting reset protocols. The reset failed. The backup system failed." Technicians from various species rushed to access terminals, their movements growing increasingly frantic as they realized the extent of the problem. Leo watched as frustration mounted across the chamber. Without reliable translation, The delicate diplomacy that held the alliance together was in jeopardy. He glanced down at his datapad. As a linguist and computer engineer by training, Leo had spent months studying the station's systems, particularly the translation network that fascinated him. He had even created a personal interface that allowed him to access certain parts of core subsystems. For his research, with proper authorization, of course. A pattern in the error codes flashing across his screen caught his attention. It wasn't a hardware failure, as the technicians seemed to believe. There was a logical inconsistency in the core translation algorithm, a recursive error that was exponentially compounding with each translation attempt. Leo hesitated. He wasn't supposed to intervene. He wasn't even on the technical team. But as the chaos grew and he saw the Cthar ambassador gesturing angrily toward the Mavosian delegation, who appeared equally agitated, he made a decision. His fingers flew across his datapad, accessing the translation system through his research portal. He bypassed the standard interface, diving deep into the code architecture. There, a conflicting logical operator in the semantic processing matrix. Someone had accidentally introduced a paradoxical instruction during a routine update, and the system couldn't resolve it. Leo crafted a patch, simple but elegant, that would isolate the faulty logic and create a temporary workaround until a permanent fix could be implemented. He hesitated only briefly before uploading it to the system. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the harsh static faded, and clear translations resumed flowing through the communication devices. The relief in the room was palpable as species once again understood each other. Translation systems restored, core announced. Temporary patch implemented. Source of patch. Workspace Terminal 47B, registered to Ambassador Leo of Earth. All eyes turned toward Leo, who suddenly wished he could disappear into his seat. The Cthar ambassador's gaze was appraising. The luminous lumina representative pulsed with colors that Leo recognized as surprise. And then, at the edge of his vision, Leo noticed movement. Zorgan the Great, who had been observing the chaos from his oversized seat without visible reaction, turned his massive head directly toward Leo. Those golden eyes narrowed slightly, the ridged brow furrowing in what might have been confusion or curiosity. For the briefest moment, their eyes met, and Leo felt a chill run down his spine, not entirely from fear. The meeting resumed, but Leo could feel the dynamic had subtly shifted. When it came time for his presentation about the research outpost, he found that representatives were paying more attention than usual. The proposal passed with minimal discussion, and as the meeting concluded, several delegates approached to congratulate him both on the successful proposal and his quick thinking during the translation crisis. As Leo gathered his materials, he sensed a presence behind him, a shadow that seemed to blot out the light. He turned slowly, his breath catching as he found himself looking up, and further up into the face of Zorgan the Great. The Zorgonian made no sound, no movement. He simply regarded Leo with those intense golden eyes for a long, uncomfortable moment. Then, without a word, he turned and walked away, leaving Leo with the distinct impression that he had just been thoroughly evaluated. Little did Leo know, this was just the beginning. In the days following the translation system incident, Leo noticed subtle changes in how he was treated on the station. Some of the technical staff sought his input on system optimizations, and he received formal acknowledgement from the station's operations director for his quick action. But most noticeable was the fact that Zorgan the Great seemed to appear in places where Leo worked or conducted research, always at a distance, always observing. Leo tried to ignore the unnerving surveillance, focusing instead on his duties and personal research projects. He was in the middle of analyzing linguistic patterns in ancient Cthar text when Kor's voice interrupted his concentration. Ambassador Leo, your presence is requested at the Technical Council emergency meeting in Chamber 12A. Priority level, urgent. Leo frowned. The Technical Council consisted of the most advanced engineers and scientists from across the Alliance. They rarely involved diplomatic personnel in their proceedings. Kor, there must be a mistake. I'm not on the Technical Council. No mistake, Ambassador. Your specific attendance was requested by Senior Engineer Vale of the Lumina delegation. Intrigued and somewhat concerned, Leo made his way to Chamber 12A. As he entered, he immediately sensed the tension in the room. Representatives from a dozen species hunched over displays or engaged in heated discussions. In the center of the room, a holographic representation of Xylo's station rotated slowly, with several sections highlighted in pulsing red. Senior Engineer Vale, a lumina whose form shimmered with agitated blue pulses, floated toward him. Ambassador Leo, thank you for coming quickly. The lumina's voice came through a translator device, as their natural communication was through light pulses rather than sound. What's happening? Leo asked, studying the hologram. We're under attack, but not in any conventional sense, Vale explained. A virus has infiltrated our central computer systems. It bypassed our most sophisticated security protocols as if they weren't there. Leo moved closer to one of the displays, examining the scrolling data. What systems are affected? That's the concerning part. It's not destroying anything, at least not yet. It's accessing historical databases, security protocols, and most worryingly, information about Xylos' central power core. The mention of the power core caught Leo's attention. Xylos was powered by an ancient energy source discovered by the Alliance decades ago. Technology so advanced that even the most technologically superior species in the Alliance didn't fully understand it. The power core was heavily protected, both physically and digitally. How is this possible? Leo asked. The core systems are isolated from the main network. They should be, agreed a Kthar engineer named Kress, his scaled fingers manipulating a complex three-dimensional security diagram. But this virus doesn't behave like any code we've ever encountered. It adapts, learns, and most disturbingly, it seems to anticipate our countermeasures. Leo studied the virus's behavior patterns displayed on the screens. Something about them tickled his memory, a concept from Earth's early computer science history. Has anyone tried a honeypot strategy? He asked. The assembled engineers looked at him with expressions ranging from confusion to mild interest. "And what?" asked Kress. A honeypot, an isolated system designed to look like a valuable target. We could create a replica of the core database, make it look like the security was weakened, and lure the virus there. Once contained, we could study it without risk to the actual systems. Vale's form pulsed with skeptical yellow. Our AI defensive protocols are far more sophisticated than simple containment strategies. That's just it, Leo said, excitement building as his idea took shape. This virus is outthinking your advanced systems. But sometimes older, simpler approaches work precisely because they're unexpected. The virus is looking for patterns it recognizes, so we give it one, but with a trap inside. Several council members exchanged doubtful looks. A Mavosian engineer with 6 tentacular appendages made a dismissive gesture. With respect, Ambassador, this is not a diplomatic matter. Our combined technological expertise is failing, interrupted a deep, resonant voice that seemed to vibrate the very air in the chamber. All heads turned toward the entrance where Zorgan the Great stood, his massive frame nearly filling the doorway. The council members fell silent as the Zorgonian moved into the room with surprising grace for a being of his size. The human should be permitted to attempt his strategy, Zorgan continued, those golden eyes fixed on Leo. Your sophisticated defenses have proven inadequate. The stunned silence that followed was broken by Senior Engineer Vale. Lord Zorgan, we appreciate your input, but with all due respect, how would a representative from a species that achieved interstellar travel less than a decade ago have insights that our combined millennia of technological advancement doesn't? Zorgan's gaze never left Leo as he answered. Because the little thinker sees patterns where you see only complexity. The term little thinker sent a ripple of surprise through the room. For a Zorgonian to bestow a personal identifier on another being was extremely rare. Leo felt a curious mix of intimidation and validation under Zorgan's intense scrutiny. I'd need access to a secure terminal and permissions to create an isolated subnet within the system, he said, deciding to focus on the problem rather than the politics. After a brief debate, the council reluctantly granted Leo the access he requested. With Vale and Cress assisting, he set to work creating his digital trap. Hours passed as Leo coded the honeypot system, carefully crafting it to mimic the Power Core database structure while incorporating subtle modifications that would contain and analyze any intrusion. The modifications are complete, Leo finally announced, rubbing his tired eyes. Now we wait. It didn't take long. Within 20 minutes, the virus detected the apparent vulnerability and diverted part of its processes to investigate. As soon as it entered the honeypot, Leo activated the isolation protocols, cutting off any escape routes. "We've got it," Leo exclaimed, fingers flying across the interface as he initiated the analysis sequence. "It's trapped in the containment field." The captured fragment of the virus provided crucial insights. It wasn't merely a program, but an advanced AI construct with a specific mission: to locate and extract information about the ancient technology powering the station. More disturbing was the evidence that the virus had been created using proprietary coding techniques known only to Alliance members. This wasn't an external attack, Leo concluded grimly. It came from within the Alliance. The implications were severe. Someone with high-level access had initiated an attack on Xylos's most sensitive systems. But who? And why? As the Technical Council absorbed this troubling information, Leo noticed Zorgan watching him with an unreadable expression. When the meeting adjourned, the Zorgonian approached with deliberate steps that made the floor vibrate slightly. "Human," Zorgan's deep voice rumbled. "You will come with me." It wasn't a request. Leo glanced around, but the other council members were carefully avoiding looking in their direction. No help would come from that quarter. "May I ask where we're going?" Leo managed to keep his voice steady despite his racing heart. "My private chambers," Zorgan replied simply, already turning to leave. Leo followed, keenly aware of the stares they attracted as they moved through the station corridors. No one had ever been invited to Zorgan's private domain. At least, no one who had returned to speak of it. The Zorgonian habitat section was maintained at higher gravity, temperature, and humidity than most of the station. Leo felt immediately heavier as they crossed the environmental barrier, his movements becoming more labored in the dense atmosphere. Zorgan's quarters were surprisingly austere, functional rather than ostentatious. The furniture was proportioned for his massive size, making Leo feel even smaller than usual. One wall displayed weapons of various designs, all clearly lethal. Another featured a large viewport that offered a spectacular view of the galaxy beyond. "Sit." Zorgan indicated a platform that, while serving as a mere footstool for the Zorgonian, was an adequate seat for Leo. Leo perched on the edge, trying not to appear as nervous as he felt. "Have I done something wrong?" Zorgan regarded him silently for a moment before speaking. "You have done something interesting. That is rarer." The Zorgonian moved to what appeared to be a food preparation area and returned with 2 containers. One massive mug for himself and a smaller cup that he offered to Leo. "This is compatible with human physiology," Zorgan stated. "A stimulant beverage." Leo accepted the cup cautiously and sniffed. It smelled surprisingly like a spiced tea. He took a small sip. It was actually quite pleasant, with notes of cinnamon and something unfamiliar but refreshing. "Thank you," Leo said, genuinely surprised by the hospitality. Zorgan sat on a large platform across from Leo, his golden eyes never leaving the human's face. "You recognize the nature of the virus when the combined intellectual resources of the Technical Council could not." "Explain." It wasn't a question so much as a command. Leo took another sip of the tea-like beverage, gathering his thoughts. "It reminded me of early computer game theory from Earth's history," he explained. "Specifically, something called the prisoner's dilemma and iterative game strategies. The virus was playing a game, looking for patterns in our responses and adapting. But all games have rules and boundaries. I just had to create a game where the rules favored us." Zorgan's head tilted slightly. "You think in patterns that are unexpected. Tell me of Earth." And so began the strangest conversation of Leo's life. For hours, he found himself describing Earth's history, languages, cultures, and technologies to the massive Predator who listened with intense focus, occasionally asking incisive questions that revealed a razor-sharp intellect. As their conversation progressed, Leo realized something surprising. Zorgan wasn't merely interrogating him. The Zorgonian was genuinely curious about humans and their ways of thinking. Your species achieved in centuries what took others millennia, Zorgan observed. Yet physically, you are fragile. No natural weapons, no significant strength, limited sensory capacity. By all logic, you should have been prey species, not spacefarers. Leo smiled slightly. We compensate with our minds and our social structures. Cooperation and innovation are our evolutionary advantages. Zorgan made a sound, a rumbling vibration that Leo couldn't quite interpret. Most species fear what they do not understand, my kind included, but fear limits perception. You did not let fear prevent you from seeing the pattern in the virus. I was afraid, Leo admitted. I'm still afraid, sitting here with you. But sometimes you have to act despite fear. Zorgan stood suddenly, towering over Leo. Kulme, there is more to discuss, but not here. Walls have sensors, and sensors have watchers. Leo followed Zorgan through a series of rarely used corridors until they reached a maintenance section that appeared abandoned. The Zorgonian activated a hidden panel, revealing a small chamber beyond. Few know of this place, Zorgan explained as they entered. It is shielded from Core's monitoring. Inside, Zorgan activated a secure holographic display. What I show you now must remain between us. The virus was not just seeking information about the power core. It was searching for this. The hologram displayed what appeared to be an ancient artifact, a small, crystalline structure of impossible complexity. What is it? Leo asked, fascinated. The original source of the technology that powers Xylos, Zorgan replied. The progenitor key. What most do not know is that it is more than a power source. It is believed to contain the complete knowledge of an ancient civilization that predates all known species in the Alliance. Leo's mind raced with the implications. And someone wants to steal it. Not steal. Activate. Zorgan's expression grew even more serious. The power core is merely the key in dormant state. If fully activated, it could potentially provide access to technologies beyond our comprehension. Technologies that could shift the balance of power throughout the galaxy. But who would risk destabilizing the Alliance this way? Leo wondered aloud. That, Zorgan said grimly, is what we must discover. The virus was only the first attempt. There will be others. Leo couldn't keep the surprise from his voice. Zorgan's massive head dipped in what might have been the Zorgonian equivalent of a nod. You see patterns others miss, little thinker. I have resources and knowledge few possess. Together, we may uncover this threat before it is too late. As they left the hidden chamber, Leo realized that in the span of a single day, he had somehow become the confidant and ally of the most feared being on Xylos. More surprisingly, he found himself looking forward to working with the intimidating alien. Neither of them noticed the small, dark device that activated in the corner of the corridor as they passed, its lens focusing briefly on their retreating forms before going dormant once more. Over the following weeks, a strange partnership formed between Leo and Zorgan. They established a routine of meeting in various secure locations across the station to share information and theories about the virus attack and its perpetrators. To the astonishment of many on the station, Zorgan began to publicly acknowledge Leo, sometimes even seeking him out in the communal areas to continue their discussions. The rumors spread quickly. The terrifying apex predator had taken a peculiar interest in the tiny human. Some whispered it was merely a predator toying with potential prey, but those who observed them closely noted something else, a genuine intellectual connection that transcended their physical differences. Your quarters are monitored, Zorgan informed Leo one evening as they walked through the botanical gardens, a neutral location where conversations could be lost among the rustling foliage. Communications, environmental controls, even your personal datapad. Leo frowned. By whom? Core. Core is the instrument, but not the mind behind it. I have traced the surveillance protocols to a terminal used exclusively by the Mavosian delegation. The Mavosians, a technologically advanced species known for their six-limbed physiology and their extensive knowledge of quantum computing. They had always been cordial to Leo, if somewhat dismissive. What would they want with me? Leo wondered. Perhaps not you specifically, Zorgan rumbled, his massive frame creating a shadow that enveloped Leo completely as they walked. But rather what you represent. Earth's growing influence despite its recent arrival on the galactic stage. They paused before a specimen of a rare flowering plant from Zorgan's homeworld. A massive, carnivorous bloom with iridescent petals that seemed to absorb light much like the Zorgonian scales. There is something else you should know, Zorgan continued, his voice lowered even further. I have analyzed the virus code fragment you captured. It contains elements of both Mavosian and Cathar programming architecture, yet neither species would benefit from destabilizing the alliance. Leo considered this. A false flag operation? Someone trying to implicate both parties. Precisely, little thinker. Zorgan's use of the nickname had become commonplace in their private conversations. And there is more. 3 days ago, there was an unauthorized access attempt at the physical security checkpoint nearest the power core. The security logs were altered to erase the incident, but my personal monitoring systems recorded it. Did you identify who made the attempt? The visual data was corrupted, deliberately I believe. But the timing is significant. It occurred during the ambassador's reception when most high-ranking officials, including both of us, were accounted for in the Grand Hall. Leo's mind raced through the possibilities. Someone with high clearance who wasn't expected at the reception, or someone using borrowed credentials. A subtle vibration from Zorgan's throat indicated approval. Your mind works in efficient paths, little thinker. I have compiled a list of individuals fitting those criteria. 27 in total. That's still too many to investigate discreetly, Leo noted. Indeed. Which is why we must force our adversary to reveal themselves. Zorgan's golden eyes gleamed with what Leo had come to recognize as the Zorgonian equivalent of strategic enthusiasm. I propose we create the appearance of a vulnerability, a controlled situation where they believe they can access the progenitor key. Leo felt a slow smile spread across his face. Another honeypot, but this time physical rather than digital. Precisely. Zorgan inclined his massive head. But to succeed, we will need allies we can trust absolutely. The circle must remain small. Core, Leo suggested. Too integrated with station systems. If our adversary has the access we suspect, Core could be compromised without its own knowledge. Leo thought for a moment. What about Senior Engineer Vale? The Lumina showed genuine concern during the virus incident. Zorgan considered this. The Lumina are difficult to corrupt due to their collective consciousness structure. A reasonable choice. And I would add one more, Crest of the Cathar. His clan has served mine for generations. His loyalty is beyond question. With their small circle of trust established, Leo and Zorgan began to implement their plan. Using Vale's access to the power systems and Crest's security credentials, they created what appeared to be a maintenance schedule that would temporarily reduce security around a secondary access point to the power core chamber. The maintenance was scheduled for 3 days hence during the station's night cycle when activity would be at its lowest. What their adversary wouldn't know was that the access point would be under constant surveillance by Zorgan himself, while Leo, Vale, and Crest monitored from a hidden security station established in one of Zorgan's private chambers. The night of the operation arrived. Leo sat beside Vale and Cress in the dimly lit monitoring room, watching the feeds from multiple hidden cameras placed throughout the approach corridors to the power core. Zorgan had taken up position in a concealed compartment near the access point, his massive form somehow folded into a space that seemed too small to contain him. All systems are functioning correctly, Vale reported, their luminous form pulsing with focused blue energy. Security protocols are showing the planned reduction in coverage. Internal sensors are registering normal activity throughout the station. Cress added, his scaled fingers moving across the control interfaces with practiced efficiency. Leo checked his chronometer. 2 hours into the night cycle, and nothing unusual had occurred. He was beginning to wonder if their trap was too obvious when one of the motion sensors triggered a silent alert. "Movement in Corridor 37B," he said quietly, focusing the camera feed. The figure moving through the dimly lit corridor was wearing a standard environmental suit with the helmet opaqued, impossible to identify visually. "Biological scans?" Leo asked. Kress manipulated the controls. "Inconclusive. The suit is blocking most of the scan. Could be Mavosian, Cthar, or several other species of similar mass." They watched as the figure approached the access point, moving with purpose but caution. It paused at the security panel, attached a small device, and the door slid open without an alarm, exactly as planned. "Zorgan is in position," Vale confirmed, monitoring a separate communication channel, ready to intercept. But instead of entering immediately, the figure hesitated, then placed another device on the floor just inside the doorway. A small holographic projection appeared, creating the illusion that the figure had entered while the actual intruder retreated back down the corridor. A decoy, Leo realized. They suspected a trap. "Alert Zorgan." Vale's form pulsed with urgent red flashes as they transmitted the warning, but it was too late. A massive energy surge erupted from the device, temporarily overloading the local systems and plunging the corridor into darkness. When emergency power restored the camera feeds, the figure was gone, and Zorgan was emerging from his hiding place, clearly frustrated but unharmed. "They knew," Kress hissed, tail thrashing in agitation. "Someone leaked information about our operation." Leo shook his head. Or they were simply being cautious. Either way, they've revealed something important. They're sophisticated and well-equipped. This isn't the work of a single individual or even a small group. There's significant resources behind this operation. Their failed trap yielded another crucial piece of information. Detailed analysis of the decoy device showed it contained components manufactured exclusively by a conglomerate based in the Vega system, a region controlled by a species called the Nyx, who maintained a small delegation on Xylos, but generally kept to themselves. The Nyx? Leo was surprised. They've never shown much interest in alliance politics or technology. Perhaps that apparent disinterest was strategic, Zorgan suggested during their debrief the following day. A species that appears uninvolved provides the perfect cover for clandestine operations. Further investigation revealed that the Nyx delegation had recently expanded, bringing in several new cultural attaches whose credentials were impeccable, but whose backgrounds proved difficult to verify. "We need more evidence," Leo insisted. "Before we make any accusations against a member species, we need to be absolutely certain." Zorgan agreed. "Accusations without proof could destabilize the very alliance we seek to protect. We must observe, gather information, and prepare for their next move." That next move came sooner than expected and from a direction they hadn't anticipated. Leo was working late in his office when Kor's voice interrupted him with an unusual edge of urgency. "Ambassador Leo, security breach detected in Section 47, Level 3. Environmental systems compromised. Emergency protocols initiated." Leo frowned. Section 47 contained primarily storage and maintenance facilities, not a likely target for their mysterious adversary. Unless... Kor, what's stored in that section? Section 47 contains atmospheric regulation equipment, waste processing units, and auxiliary power distribution nodes, Kor replied. Auxiliary power distribution. If someone wanted to create a distraction or weaken the station's systems before a larger attack. Leo activated his secure communicator. "Zorgan, we have a situation. Section 47 has been compromised. I think it might be a diversion." The Zorgonian's response was immediate. "Agreed. Too obvious to be the main objective. Where are you now?" "My office. I'm going to check the security feeds for other anomalies." "No." Zorgan's voice carried absolute authority. "Go to my quarters immediately. It is the most secure location on the station. I will join you there." Leo hesitated only briefly before complying. As he moved through the corridors toward the Zergonian habitat section, he noticed an unusual pattern of activity. Security personnel were all moving towards Section 47, leaving other areas of the station with minimal coverage. Just as he reached the environmental barrier to Zorgan's section, the lights throughout the corridor flickered. The barrier's control panel displayed an error message, and the gravitational and atmospheric adjustments that normally made the transition comfortable deactivated. Leo steeled himself and pushed through anyway, immediately staggering under the increased gravity and struggling to breathe in the dense, humid atmosphere. He forced himself forward, each step requiring significant effort as his lungs worked overtime. He had almost reached Zorgan's quarters when he heard footsteps behind him, too light to be the Zergonian. Leo turned to see three figures in environmental suits advancing toward him, devices in hand that were definitely not standard station equipment. With the heavy gravity slowing his movements and his breathing already labored, Leo knew he couldn't outrun them. He backed toward Zorgan's door, hoping the Zergonian's security systems would recognize him. The lead figure spoke, voice distorted by their helmet. "Ambassador Leo, you become quite troublesome. Had you stayed focused on your diplomatic duties instead of playing detective with your Zergonian friend, this would not have been necessary." "Who are you?" Leo demanded, trying to keep them talking while he continued to edge backward. "What do you want with the progenitor key?" "The key is wasted on the Alliance," the figure replied. "Its power and knowledge should belong to those who can truly utilize it, those who have the vision to reshape the galaxy." The door behind Leo remained stubbornly closed. The figures raised their devices, weapons, Leo now realized, and he braced himself for whatever would come next. What came next was a roar so powerful it seemed to shake the very structure of the station. From an adjacent corridor, Zorgan burst forth with a speed that belied his enormous size, all four arms extended with natural weapons deployed, razor-sharp claws fully extended from sheaths in his fingertips. The three figures immediately fired their weapons, energy weapons that discharged brilliant blue bolts. Two struck Zorgan, dissipating harmlessly against his scales. The third missed entirely as the Zergonian closed the distance with frightening velocity. What followed was both terrifying and awe-inspiring. Zorgan moved with the practiced efficiency of an apex predator, his attacks precise and devastatingly effective. Within seconds, two of the attackers were incapacitated, their weapons crushed to useless fragments. The third attempted to flee but found their path blocked as Kress and two other Kthar security officers arrived from the other end of the corridor, weapons drawn. "Surrender," Kress commanded. "You are surrounded." The figure hesitated, then slowly raised their hands. As Kress moved to secure them, the figure suddenly convulsed and collapsed to the floor. A faint hissing sound emanated from their suit, some kind of fail-safe mechanism or suicide protocol. Zorgan turned immediately to Leo, who was leaning heavily against the wall, still struggling with the high gravity and dense atmosphere. "You are injured?" the Zergonian demanded, golden eyes scanning Leo intently. "No," Leo managed between labored breaths. "Just the gravity, atmosphere." Without hesitation, Zorgan scooped Leo up with one massive arm and carried him into his quarters, where he quickly adjusted the environmental controls to more human-friendly settings. As Leo's breathing eased, Zorgan set him down with surprising gentleness on a cushioned surface. "You should not have come through the barrier with the adjustments deactivated," Zorgan admonished, though his tone conveyed concern rather than anger. "Your physiology is not adapted to such conditions." "Didn't have much choice," Leo replied, color returning to his face as he caught his breath. "They cut off other routes." "How did you know I was in trouble?" "I have my own monitoring systems," Zorgan replied, moving to a console to check security feeds. "And I was already en route when Core reported the breach." The timing and location suggested a diversion. Kress entered, his scales still flushed with the greenish hue that indicated combat readiness in Kthar physiology. "The attackers are secured, but one self-terminated before we could begin questioning," he reported. "The other two are unconscious but alive. Initial scans confirm they are Nyx as suspected, and the situation in Section 47? Leo asked. Contained, Kress answered. It was indeed a diversion, a controlled overload of power distribution nodes. Minor damage, no casualties. Their primary objective? Zorgan questioned. Unknown, but security reports unusual activity near the science labs in Section 22. Investigation is ongoing. Leo's eyes widened. Section 22. That's where they keep the specialized scanning equipment. The kind that could analyze the progenitor key if they managed to access it. Zorgan's expression darkened. They are preparing for the final stage of their plan. The diversions, the surveillance, all leading to an attempt to seize and activate the key. But they failed today, Leo pointed out. We've identified them, captured some of their operatives. Surely they'll abort their plan now. Or accelerate it, Zorgan countered. If they believe their cover is compromised, they may decide to act immediately rather than risk losing their opportunity entirely. Leo considered this. Either way, we need to alert the full council. With what evidence? Kress asked. The captured Nicks are low-level operatives, unlikely to possess knowledge of the broader conspiracy. Without concrete proof of who is ultimately behind this, accusations could create diplomatic chaos. Kress is correct, Zorgan agreed. We must first identify the true architects of this plot. The Nicks may be merely instruments. They spent the next several hours analyzing the equipment recovered from the attackers and reviewing station security logs with ever-increasing concern. The pattern that emerged suggested a long-term, highly coordinated operation with roots reaching back months, possibly years. Whoever was behind this had been patient, methodical, and had resources that spanned multiple species and star systems. As the station's night cycle approached again, Leo rubbed his tired eyes. We're missing something obvious. Zorgan, who had been silently reviewing data for the past hour, suddenly stiffened. The Ambassador's Summit. Leo looked up. What about it? It begins tomorrow. All senior Alliance representatives will gather in the Grand Council chamber, leaving the rest of the station with reduced high-level supervision. Zorgan's golden eyes met Leo's. The perfect opportunity for their final move. The realization hit Leo with chilling clarity, and the increased security for the summit will draw resources from other areas, including the power core. Precisely, Zorgan confirmed, rising to his full imposing height. We must prepare for an imminent attempt on the progenitor key. They worked through the night, developing a counter-strategy with Kress and Vale. By morning, they had established a covert security perimeter around the power core, using trusted personnel from Zorgan's and Kress's security teams. Vale implemented subtle modifications to the core's monitoring systems that would alert them to any unauthorized access attempts without tipping off the potential infiltrators. Leo attended the opening of the Ambassador's Summit as required by his position, but his mind was elsewhere, constantly checking the secure communicator on his wrist for update from their makeshift security operation. Halfway through the opening ceremonies, his communicator vibrated with an urgent alert from Vale. Unauthorized access detected. Power Core Subsection 12. Security protocols bypassed. Leo discreetly showed the message to the Kthar ambassador seated beside him, who had been briefed on the situation earlier. With a nearly imperceptible nod, Sarek rose and made a formal request for a brief recess, citing a minor diplomatic matter requiring immediate attention. As the summit broke for the recess, Leo slipped away, meeting Zorgan at a predetermined rendezvous point. The Zergonian's expression was grim. They have penetrated the outer security perimeter, Zorgan reported. A team of at least 6 operatives using advanced cloaking technology that masked them from standard sensors. They disabled 2 security officers before they could raise an alarm. Are we too late? Leo asked, dread pooling in his stomach. Not yet. They still need to breach the core chamber itself, which has redundant security systems. Vale is monitoring their progress. Kress and his team are moving to cut off their retreat, but the infiltrators have placed jamming devices throughout the surrounding sections, limiting our communications. Leo considered their options. If they reach the key, what's the worst-case scenario? Zorgan's expression grew even more severe. If they fully activate the progenitor key rather than simply removing it, the energy release alone could destabilize the station systems. In the worst case, it could trigger a cascading failure of the artificial gravity, life support, and structural integrity fields. The entire station could be destroyed, Leo realized, along with everyone on it. Yes, and if they somehow managed to control that power rather than simply releasing it, they could hold the entire alliance hostage. Leo finished the thought. We have to stop them before they reach the inner chamber. Zorgan hesitated, something Leo had never seen the Zorgonian do before. The risk is extreme. The jamming field will prevent communications once we enter that section. We would be isolated, potentially outnumbered. Do we have a choice? Leo asked simply. The massive alien regarded him silently for a moment, then reached a decision. No, but you will remain here where it is safe. I will. Absolutely not, Leo interrupted. My size might actually be an advantage in those narrow maintenance corridors, and 2 minds are better than 1 if something goes wrong. Zorgan looked as though he might argue further, but instead nodded once. Very well, little thinker, but you will stay behind me at all times. They made their way through rarely used maintenance passages, avoiding the main corridors where the jamming devices were concentrated. As they approached the power core section, the lighting dimmed and emergency systems activated, bathing everything in a red glow. They've initiated a power fluctuation, Zorgan observed, likely to mask their activities from the main systems. The jamming field grew stronger as they proceeded, until their communicators became useless. They were on their own. They encountered the first sign of the infiltrators at a security checkpoint. 2 Alliance security officers unconscious on the floor, their weapons missing. Zorgan checked them quickly. Stunned, not killed. They will recover. Leo examined the security panel. They bypassed the biometric scanners completely, removed them rather than trying to fake credentials. Professional work. They continued forward with increased caution. The narrow corridors and maintenance shafts proved challenging for Zorgan's massive frame, forcing him to move more slowly than usual. Leo found himself taking the lead at several points, scouting ahead through spaces the Zorgonian couldn't easily navigate. As they neared the final approach to the core chamber, they heard voices ahead, urgent, hushed conversations, and the sounds of equipment being moved. Leo peered carefully around a corner and saw them. 5 figures in sleek environmental suits working on the massive door that sealed the inner core chamber. Their equipment was like nothing Leo had seen before, seemingly designed specifically to bypass the Alliance's most sophisticated security measures. He retreated to where Zorgan waited. 5 that I can see. They're almost through the final door. We're out of time. Zorgan's expression hardened. We cannot allow them to reach the key. I will engage them directly, create a diversion. You must find a way to trigger the emergency containment protocols for the core chamber. That would lock down the entire section, Leo pointed out. We'd be trapped in here with them. Better trapped than allowing them to succeed, Zorgan replied grimly. The emergency protocols can only be activated from a security station 20 meters down that corridor. He pointed to a narrow passage to their right. Once activated, you'll have approximately 30 seconds to reach a safety zone before lockdown completes. Leo understood what Zorgan wasn't saying. The Zorgonian would likely be unable to reach safety in time, given the narrow passages and his size. He would be sacrificing himself to stop the infiltrators. There has to be another way, Leo insisted. What if instead of triggering a full lockdown, we initiate a targeted power surge through the door mechanism they're working on? It could disable their equipment, maybe even incapacitate them temporarily. Zorgan considered this. Possible, but it would require precise timing and access to the power distribution controls, which we can get from that same security station, Leo pointed out. It's worth trying before we resort to a full lockdown. After a moment's consideration, Zorgan nodded. Proceed to the security station. I will move into position to engage them if your plan fails. Leo slipped down the side corridor, using his small size to advantage as he navigated through narrow maintenance spaces. He reached the security station, a small room filled with monitoring equipment and control interfaces, and immediately set to work. The station's controls had been partially locked out, but Leo's experience with the system during the virus incident gave him insights into workarounds. He managed to access the power distribution grid for the section and began programming a targeted surge that would channel through the specific systems the infiltrators were interfacing with. He was nearly finished when a voice spoke from behind him. Impressive adaptation, Ambassador. But ultimately futile. Leo spun to find himself facing a Mavosian in an environmental suit, one tentacle-like appendage holding an energy weapon pointed directly at him. The Mavosian's outer membrane pulsed with what might have been amusement. Chief Science Officer Zellner. Leo recognized the Mavosian delegate with shock. "You're part of this?" "Part of it." Zellner's voice carried a tone of pride. "I orchestrated it. The Knicks are merely convenient scapegoats, expendable assets with useful technical skills." "What?" Leo demanded, trying to keep Zellner talking while his fingers discreetly completed the final command sequence behind his back. "The Alliance has benefited all member species, including the Mavosians. The Alliance maintains stability by ensuring no single species gains technological superiority," Zellner replied. "A convenient arrangement for established powers, but it stifles true progress. The progenitor key holds knowledge that could advance our understanding by millennia. Why should that power remain dormant when it could be harnessed? Because some knowledge is too dangerous to be controlled by any single entity," Leo countered. "The Alliance's founders understood that. A convenient myth perpetuated by those who already held power," Zellner dismissed. "Now step away from the console. My associates are nearly through the final security measures." Leo appeared to comply, raising his hands and stepping sideways, while simultaneously hitting the execute command with his elbow as he moved. The lights flickered throughout the section. From the direction of the core chamber came shouts of alarm, followed by the distinctive sound of energy discharges and equipment shorting out. Zellner's attention wavered for just an instant, enough for Leo to lunge for the door. The Mavosian fired, the energy blast scorching the wall where Leo had stood a split second earlier. Leo sprinted down the corridor, shouting for Zorgan. He rounded a corner just as Zellner fired again, the blast grazing his shoulder and sending him sprawling to the floor. Pain seared through his arm, but he forced himself back to his feet. Ahead, he could see the infiltration team in disarray, their equipment smoking and sparking from the power surge. Zorgan was engaged with 3 of them simultaneously, his massive form moving with shocking speed and precision. Zellner was close behind Leo now, weapon raised for a killing shot. Enough of this. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Zorgan, while grappling with one of the infiltrators, spotted Leo and the Mavosian. His golden eyes widened in alarm. With a roar that shook the corridor, the Zorgonian flung his opponent aside and lunged toward Leo. Zellner fired. The energy blast streaked toward Leo, only to be intercepted by one of Zorgan's massive arms as the Zorgonian placed himself between Leo and danger. The blast struck Zorgan's scales, which absorbed most of the energy but still left a smoking wound. With his 3 remaining arms, Zorgan reached out, 2 restraining Zellner with crushing force, the 3rd gently pulling Leo behind him, away from danger. "You will not harm him." Zorgan's voice was deeper and more menacing than Leo had ever heard it, resonating through the corridor like a physical force. "You will not harm my little brother. Little brother. Not little thinker. Brother." Zellner struggled futilely in Zorgan's grasp. "This changes nothing. Others know of the key's potential. Even if you stop us today." "We have stopped you," Zorgan interrupted, his voice cold. "Your conspirators are neutralized. Your plan has failed." The sound of multiple footsteps announced the arrival of Kress and his security team, who had finally managed to navigate around the jamming devices. They quickly secured the remaining infiltrators while medical personnel tended to the injured. In the aftermath, as station security processed the conspirators and technical teams assessed the damage, Leo sat in the medical bay, his injured shoulder being treated. Zorgan stood nearby, refusing treatment for his own wound, his attention fixed on Leo. You called me little brother, Leo said quietly when they were momentarily alone. Zorgan was silent for a long moment before responding. In my culture, there is no higher honor than to claim another as kin. It is not done lightly. And an apex predator claiming a physically weaker species as kin? Leo asked, is that also traditional? Something resembling a smile touched Zorgan's features, a rare expression for the normally stoic Zorgonian. It is unprecedented, but so is much about our friendship. Leo found himself smiling despite the pain in his shoulder. I'm honored. Truly. Zorgan inclined his massive head slightly. As am I, little brother. As am I. In the days that followed, Xylo's station gradually returned to normal operations. The plot to seize the Predetor key was revealed to the full council, along with evidence of Zellner's extensive network of conspirators across multiple species and star systems. Enhanced security measures were implemented around the power core, and a comprehensive review of all station protocols was initiated. The story of how the smallest ambassador on the station and the fearsome Zorgonian had together uncovered and thwarted the plot spread rapidly, growing with each retelling. The sight of Zorgan the Great walking the corridors with his little brother at his side became a common occurrence, no longer drawing shocked stares, but rather respectful acknowledgments. A formal ceremony was held to honor those who had protected the station. Leo stood uncomfortably in the spotlight as Alliance representatives from dozens of worlds expressed their gratitude. Throughout it all, Zorgan remained nearby, his imposing presence now a source of reassurance rather than intimidation. The Alliance was founded on principles of cooperation and mutual respect, the Council Chair proclaimed during the ceremony. Ambassador Leo and Lord Zorgan have demonstrated that these principles transcend physical differences, cultural boundaries, and even evolutionary history. Their partnership reminds us that strength comes in many forms, and that wisdom can be found in unexpected places. As the ceremony concluded and the attendees mingled, Leo found himself approached by the Cthar ambassador. Your actions have earned you the respect of my people, Sarek rumbled. No small achievement for a species so compact. Leo smiled. I'll take that as a high compliment, Ambassador. As it was intended, Sarek confirmed. The Cthar value strength above all else, but you have shown us that strength manifests in ways beyond the physical. Nearby, Kor's voice emanated from a communication terminal. Station security protocols have been updated to incorporate what I have designated as the little brother logic parameter, a recognition that unconventional approaches often yield optimal solutions to complex problems. Are you saying you've programmed my thinking patterns into your systems? Leo asked, amused. Not precisely, Kor replied. Rather, I have expanded my analytical frameworks to include consideration of non-standard methodologies. It appears I have much to learn from humans. As the gathering dispersed, Leo and Zorgan made their way to one of the station's observation decks, a quiet space with spectacular views of the surrounding galaxy. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the stars. What happens now? Leo finally asked. Back to normal diplomatic duties? Zorgan made the rumbling sound that Leo had come to recognize as the Zorgonian version of thoughtful contemplation. Normal is perhaps not the correct term. The Alliance has existed in relative stability for centuries, but recent events suggest that stability was more fragile than many believed. You think there will be more threats? Leo asked. Inevitably, Zorgan confirmed. The Predetor key remains a temptation for those who seek power, and other dangers exist beyond our current understanding. The galaxy is vast, and much of it remains unexplored. Leo considered this. So we need to be better prepared, more vigilant. Yes, but also more adaptive, more innovative. Zorgan turned his golden gaze from the stars to Leo. The Council has approved the formation of a new division within the Alliance structure, a specialized unit focused on identifying and neutralizing threats before they materialize. I've been asked to lead it. That's perfect, Leo said sincerely. No one is better qualified. I have accepted on one condition, Zorgan continued, that you serve as co-director. Leo's eyes widened in surprise. Me? But I'm just a junior ambassador from newly spacefaring species. Zorgan finished. Yes, and also the individual whose perspective and abilities made it possible to thwart a conspiracy that our combined conventional security measures failed to detect. The massive alien placed one clawed hand carefully on Leo's uninjured shoulder. Our differences are our strength, little brother. Together, we perceive what neither could see alone. Leo felt a surge of emotion, pride, gratitude, and something deeper that transcended easy categorization. A bond that had formed against all odds between two beings from worlds light years apart. Well, he said with a smile, I guess I should call Earth and let them know about my career change. Though I'm not sure how to explain that I've been adopted by a 15-foot apex predator. You will find the words, Zorgan replied with absolute confidence. You always do. As they turned back to the viewport, the vast panorama of stars spread before them like infinite possibilities. The smallest species in the room and the apex predator who called him little brother. An unlikely partnership that had already changed the course of galactic politics and would, perhaps, reshape the future itself. In the reflection of the transparent aluminum viewport, their silhouettes stood side by side, one massive and imposing, one small but no less significant. Different in almost every conceivable way, yet united by something more powerful than any physical attribute. Mutual respect, shared purpose, and the kind of trust that forms the foundation of true family, regardless of species or origin. And in the endless expanse beyond, new adventures awaited.